Imagine this, a classroom. Fluorescent lights hum like trapped insects. Rows of desks bolted to the floor form a grid of obedience. A clock ticks, each second a guillotine blade falling. At the front, a child, 7 years old, holds a crayon like a wand. Her paper erupts in neon swirls. A horse with wings. A sun that cries rain. A tree whose roots are made of lightning. You can almost smell the wax melting under her fervor. Hear the whisper of friction between pigment and pulp. This is alchemy. This is a soul speaking in colors too bright for the world. Then, a shadow falls. The teacher's hand, gentle but firm, rests on her shoulder. "Sweetheart," comes the voice, syrupy with pity. "Horses don't have wings. Trees don't cry. Let me show you how to draw them properly." The crayon is replaced with a ruler. The paper, now a grid of angles and acronyms. A for apple, B for ball, C for correct. You remember this moment, don't you? Not the details, perhaps, but the feeling. The first time your wildness met a wall. The first time you learned that truth has margins and imagination must stay within them. This is not a story about schools. This is a story about gardens. Picture a seedling pushing through concrete, tenacious, defiant. Now picture a gardener shearing it into a topiary, a perfect sphere, a polite hedge. This is the paradox of education. A system designed to cultivate minds often ends up pruning them into shapes that fit the vase. We call it learning, but beneath the surface hums a quieter, darker verb: domesticating. Sir Ken Robinson once called this the death of creativity. But let's go deeper. Let's ask the great question: what if schools aren't failing, but succeeding? Succeeding at exactly what they were designed to do? Not to ignite curiosity, but to extinguish the unruly flames of originality, to mass-produce citizens who value right answers over right questions. You feel the unease now. It starts in the gut, a primal recognition, the sense that something ancient and essential is being leashed. Think of the cavemen who painted lions under torchlight, the Polynesian navigators who crossed oceans by starlight, the poets and rebels and inventors who built civilizations not by following instructions, but by defying them. What happens to a species that trades its inherent genius for standardized rubrics? Here's the metaphor we'll carry forward. The bonsai child. Every child is born a wild oak, roots clawing at the sky. But education, like wire around a sapling, twists them into miniature versions of what they could have been. Beautiful, perhaps. Manageable, certainly, but small. Let's linger here, in the discomfort. You're not just remembering that classroom. You're in it. The smell of disinfectant. The ache in your wrist from copying sentences. The slow-motion death of the question you never asked. What if my way of seeing matters? We've all played both roles in this dance, the child with the crayon and the teacher with the ruler. We've policed imaginations, including our own. Why? Because we were told it's for your own good. Because chaos must be tamed. Because the world needs engineers, not daydreamers, right? But what if that's a lie? Consider the hummingbird. Its wings beat 80 times per second, a blur of iridescence. Now imagine forcing it to fly in straight lines, to measure each flap, to document its process. This is what we do to young minds. We trade their kaleidoscopic vision for the security of a spreadsheet. The great question isn't rhetorical, it's an autopsy. What are we losing when we amputate creativity? Not just art or innovation, but the very capacity to reimagine what it means to be human. When a child stops asking why and starts asking, will this be on the test? Something sacred dies, and we all feel its absence like phantom limbs. Here's your emotional permission slip. It's okay to tremble, to rage, to mourn the selves we abandoned in those desk-chained days. This isn't about blaming teachers or burning down institutions. It's about confronting a truth as old as Plato's cave. Systems demand conformity. Souls demand sovereignty. The collision is inevitable. So we arrive at the cliff's edge. the question that will haunt the rest of our journey. What if school isn't just killing creativity? It's killing the future. Hold that. Let it bruise you. The answer lies ahead, in the roots of the hidden problem. Begin with the bonsai. You've seen them in polished ceramic pots, tiny trees twisted into submission. Their beauty is undeniable, but it's a beauty born of coercion. Now imagine the hands that shape them, not malicious but certain that nature's chaos must be controlled, certain that wildness is wasted potential. This is the hidden problem. Education systems are not broken, they are operating exactly as intended. To understand why, we must dig into the soil of history. The roots of modern schooling stretch back to 18th century Prussia, where classrooms were designed to mold soldiers and factory workers, obedient, punctual, interchangeable. Bells, uniforms, standardized tests. These weren't innovations, they were industrial blueprints. As historian Yuval Noah Harari notes, schools as we know them are children of the Industrial Revolution, built to teach compliance above all else. But the psychological wiring runs deeper. Enter the philosophers of control. In the 19th century, psychologist Edward Thorndike declared, "Education is the art of putting constraints on the mind." His experiments on cats in puzzle boxes led to behaviorism's rise, the belief that learning is merely stimulus and response, reward and punishment. Creativity? A messy variable to be eliminated. John B. Skinner took this further. His teaching machines of the 1950s promised to mold children like clay, using drills and repetition. "We must design a world," he wrote, "where unpredictability is engineered out." Unpredictability, the very spark of invention, the heartbeat of art. Yet these men weren't villains. They reflected their era's obsession with order, a world still trembling from wars and upheaval. Their sin was reductionism, treating minds as machines and wonder as a glitch. But here's the twist. The system's architects didn't just shape education, they shaped what we value as a species. French philosopher Michel Foucault called schools laboratories of power, where surveillance, exams, attendance, grades, trains us to police ourselves. We internalize the ruler, the bell, the rubric. We learn to fear wrong answers more than unasked questions. And so the bonsai child grows, wired for approval, not audacity. Let's name the silent curriculum. The tyranny of metrics. Your worth equals your scores. The mythology of linear progress. Life as a ladder, not a labyrinth. The erasure of inner time. Curiosity can't be scheduled into 45-minute blocks. Psychologist Carl Jung saw this coming. "The shoe that fits one person pinches another," he warned. There is no universal recipe for living. Yet schools mass-produce recipes and punish those who taste the world differently. Now a story. In 1968, researcher George Land gave 1,600 children a creativity test. At age 5, 98% scored genius level. By 15, just 12%. The culprit? Education. As Land noted, we teach children to stop thinking divergently. The system isn't ignorant, it's allergic to originality. Why? Because creativity is inherently disruptive. It questions hierarchies. It melts borders between subjects. A child painting winged horses in math class isn't failing. She's rearranging reality. And that's dangerous to any institution built on control. But wait, there's hope in the cracks. Maria Montessori, banned by Mussolini for her radical schools, designed classrooms without desks. She let children learn at their own pace, guided by curiosity. Result? Kids taught themselves to read at 3, built miniature cities, solved equations for fun. Her secret? She trusted the wildness of the mind. Modern neuroscience vindicates her. Brain scans show creativity lights up the default mode network, the same region active in daydreaming. Yet schools pathologize zoning out. We medicate doodlers, discipline the dreamers. The message is clear. Stay in the lines. Here's the existential rub. We've conflated learning with schooling. Ancient Greeks knew better. Socrates taught in streets, questioning everything. Education, he said, is kindling a flame, not filling a vessel. But vessels are easier to stack in warehouses. Flames? Flames demand oxygen, space, risk. So we chose the warehouse. Why does this hurt so deeply? Because it violates a biological truth. Humans are born to create. Anthropologists find that every 3-year-old asks 100+ questions a day. By 10, most stop. Not because curiosity dies, because it's shamed. Psychologist Alison Gopnik compares children to the R&D Department of Humanity. But our schools have defunded R&D. We've outsourced innovation to Silicon Valley and called it progress, all while draining the wellspring, the unfiltered, unmanaged minds of the young. The roots are clear now. This isn't about teachers or textbooks. It's about a 200-year-old bargain. Surrender your wildness, and we'll give you a map. A map to what? A dying planet? Burnout culture? A world where AI outpaces our ability to imagine? We've reached the inflection point philosopher Ivan Illich foresaw in 1971. Schooling confuses teaching with learning, grades with education, diplomas with competence. But here's the revelation. The system's weakness is its rigidity. Every crack in the concrete is a chance for rebellion. Hold this tension. We've diagnosed the disease. Now feel its fever spreading. How the cult of standardization poisons not just schools, but workplaces, relationships, our very souls. The consequences are not abstract. They're in the therapist's office, the empty canvas, the inventor who never invented. They're in you, reading this, with that old ache. What could I have been, if? The answer isn't behind us. It's ahead. Begin with silence. Not the peaceful kind. The silence of a symphony never composed. The silence of 10,000 paintings left unpainted. The silence of questions swallowed whole. This is the sound of a world where creativity is rationed, where we've traded our collective imagination for the hum of compliance. The consequences are everywhere, but we've been trained not to see them. First, the personal toll. Meet Alex, 28. They sit in a gray cubicle, fingers hovering over a spreadsheet. Once they wrote poems about black holes and love. Now, they count other people's money. Their boss calls them reliable. Their therapist calls them dissociated. This is the afterlife of a bonsai child, a life of spectating, not creating. Neuroscience explains this rupture. When schools prioritize standardized thinking, they atrophy the brain's divergent networks, the web of connections that fuel what-if thinking. Dr. Rex Jung, a neuropsychologist, found that creative cognition thrives on disorder, messy neural pathways, unexpected links between ideas. But our classrooms sterilize disorder. We teach kids to color inside lines drawn by dead men. Result, a 2019 OECD study found that 60% of children lose creative confidence by age 10. They don't just stop drawing winged horses, they stop seeing them. Now, zoom out. The cultural cost. Every stifled artist, inventor, or visionary leaves a void in the ecosystem of human progress. Consider the adjacent possible, a term coined by scientist Stuart Kauffman to describe the frontier of attainable innovation. Every genius expands this frontier. But when we shrink genius into multiple-choice bubbles, the adjacent possible shrinks with it. We feel this in our bones. Music charts full of algorithmically optimized clones. Films rebooting the same superheroes. Political leaders regurgitating the same scripts. Where are the new myths, the bold visions, the dangerous ideas? Historian Niall Ferguson notes that every golden age of innovation, Renaissance Florence, 1920s Paris, Silicon Valley's dawn, exploded when institutions collapsed or were ignored. But our schools still worship the god of best practices. We're mining yesterday's imagination to power tomorrow. The most insidious consequence? We've forgotten how to dream together. Indigenous cultures knew that stories bind societies. The Maori passed down waka papa, genealogies linking humans to mountains and stars. The Greeks forged democracy through tragic plays. But our schools teach history as a corpse to dissect, not a fire to tend. Students memorize dates of wars but never learn to wage peace. The proof? Climate paralysis, mental health epidemics, political tribalism. These are not random crises. They're the harvest of educational systems that amputate empathy and systemic thinking. When you train generations to solve for X but not YX, you get brilliant technicians who can't fathom the ethics of their own inventions. Let's get uncomfortably specific. In 2022, a University of Texas study tracked 2,000 students from kindergarten to career. The most successful, doctors, lawyers, executives, shared one trait. They scored lowest in childhood curiosity. The system rewarded their ability to replicate, not innovate. Meanwhile, the curious ones, the questioners, the tinkerers, were often medicated for ADHD, labeled difficult, or funneled into remedial tracks. This isn't an oversight, it's a feature. Industrial education can't metabolize curiosity because curiosity is inherently subversive. But the darkest consequence lives here, in the gap between who you are and who you were meant to be. Psychologist James Hillman called this the acorn theory, the idea that each person holds an innate potential like an oak encoded in an acorn. Schools don't water acorns. They bury them under concrete and call the suffocation growth. We see the fallout in midlife crises at 30, in the rise of quit lit and the great resignation. In the haunting refrain of, "Is this all there is?" the answer is no. But we've been gaslit into forgetting our own vastness. Now, the planetary stakes. A 2023 report by the Climate Psychology Alliance found that students taught purely through standardized curricula show 40% less capacity for systems thinking, the ability to see connections between, say, consumer habits and dying coral reefs. Why? Because systems can't be parsed into bullet points. They require synthesis, the very skill schools strip away. Greta Thunberg, who defied classroom dogma to lead a climate revolution, put it bluntly, "Why should I study for a future that's being stolen?" Her rebellion isn't just against pollution, it's against pedagogy that numbs us to existential threats. Here's the unspoken truth. Every time a teacher snaps focus at a daydreaming child, a little of the world's magic dies. Every time a student is told their answer is wrong, when it's merely unexpected, we lose a fragment of the future. The data is damning. 85% of jobs that'll exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. Institute for the Future. 94% of CEOs say creativity is the most crucial leadership skill, IBM. Yet 65% of children entering school today will work in jobs that don't exist, using skills schools don't teach, World Economic Forum. We're preparing children for a world that's already gone. This is your dark night of the soul. The moment you realize the game is rigged, that the very systems promising security are strangling your soul and the world's future. It feels like free fall, like betrayal. But here's the secret. The darkness is fertile. In the womb, neurons form fastest in total blackness. Seeds crack open underground. This despair isn't an end. It's the necessary rot before rebirth. Begin in the dark, not the dark of endings, but of beginnings. The fertile void where seeds split open and roots claw upward. Rebellion isn't destruction, it's reclamation. The moment you realize the wires around your branches are not fate, but choices. And choices can be unchosen. This is not about burning down schools. It's about burning through the myth that learning requires permission. Meet the rebels. In 1874, Parisian artists Monet, Renoir, Degas hosted their own exhibition after being rejected by the Salon. Critics mocked their impressionistic daubs. Today they are dit que c'est poétique. Their work hangs in temples of culture. Lesson: what's radical in one era becomes reverence in the next. Fast forward to 2007. Sugata Mitra, an Indian physicist, drilled a hole in a slum wall, placed a computer inside, and walked away. Within weeks, illiterate children taught themselves to code. Mitra called it minimally invasive education. The system called it heresy. These rebels share a creed: trust the wild mind. The first strategy: rewild your curiosity. Biologists use rewilding to restore ecosystems by reintroducing apex predators. Your mind needs the same. Start by asking forbidden questions. What if wrong answers are just portals? What if daydreaming is the brain's R&D lab? Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset reveals that praising effort over correctness reignites creative courage. A child who hears, "I love how you tried," instead of "here's where you failed," becomes a lifelong explorer. Apply this to yourself. Keep a wonder journal. Write questions, not answers. Let them simmer. As philosopher John Dewey argued, thinking begins in disequilibrium, the itch of not knowing. Second strategy: hijack the system. In 1968, Brazilian educator Paulo Freire published Pedagogy of the Oppressed, urging students to read the world, not just the word. His literacy classes taught farm workers to dissect political power structures while learning to read. The military junta jailed him. The workers? They started unions. You don't need a revolution. Start small. Turn a staff meeting into a brainstorming carnival. Use a math class to debate ethics. Should algorithms decide bail? Teach history through sci-fi. What if Rome had social media? Finnish schools already do this. They scrap standardized subjects for phenomenon-based learning, studying climate change through science, art, and economics fused together. Result? Consistently top global rankings in creativity and academics. Third strategy: build underground networks. In the 1980s, black students in apartheid South Africa formed cultural clubs to study forbidden literature. They met in basements, coded messages into hymns. Today, TikTok teens do the same, skipping lectures to join #LearnTalk threads on quantum physics or queer history. Resistance thrives in the margins. Start a Discord server. Host a failing forward dinner party where guests share their worst ideas. Prototype, don't perfect. As artist Seth Godin says, the cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. Fourth strategy: redefine success. When Einstein worked as a patent clerk, he called it his thinkatorium, a day job funding his nighttime raids on the universe's secrets. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter on napkins between waitressing shifts. These weren't compromises. They were life hacks for a system that monetizes conformity. Ask, what if my 9 to 5 funds my 5 to 9? What if productivity includes staring at clouds? Psychologist Angela Duckworth's research on grit found that passion paired with purpose outlasts external rewards. The rebel's motto? I'll play your game, but I'll keep my game alive. The ultimate rebel, you, age 8. That child who built forts, assigned roles to stuffed animals, and negotiated treaties with the moon, they're still in you. Reanimate them. Neuroscience confirms that creativity isn't a talent, it's a practice. Brain scans of jazz musicians improvising show the same patterns as toddlers playing: heightened sensory input, dampened self-censorship. You don't need to be creative, you need to unblock it. But beware the Judas trope. Society will reward you for betraying your rebellion. Promotions for compliance, praise for silence. When writer James Baldwin refused to censor his essays on race, his editor warned, "You'll never work again." Baldwin replied, "I never worked a day in my life." I wrote, your rebellion will demand Baldwin's clarity, to distinguish between selling out and strategic survival, to know when to dismantle and when to build parallel worlds. Your rebellion. Toolkit 1. Micro actions. Sketch during Zoom calls. Turn commutes into poetry slams. 2. Allies. Find creative co-conspirators. The coworker who doodles, the teacher who hates rubrics. 3. Subversion. Answer "What's the ROI?" with "What's the cost of not doing it?" 4. Legacy. Channel past rebels. Frida Kahlo painted in bed. Beethoven composed deaf. Limitations became their launch pads. This is your invitation to gentle anarchy, not a call to quit your job or homeschool your kids unless it is. A call to infect the system with wonder, to be, in writer Toni Morrison's words, the kind of citizen who nurtures the world you want to live in. The Bonsai Child's wires are loosening. Sunlight seeps through. Begin with a forest. Not the kind you find on maps, but the one that lives in your ribs. A thicket of unlived lives, unwritten songs, unconquered frontiers. This forest is not a graveyard. It's a nursery. Every seed you buried, the artist, the inventor, the wild-eyed dreamer, is still alive, dormant, not dead. The ultimate truth is this: creativity is not a skill. It's your birthright, your ancestral echo, the oldest language you know. Revisit the Bonsai Child. The wires are gone now. The ceramic pot lies shattered. What remains is a scarred but unbroken sapling, gnarled and glorious, reaching toward the light with the arrogance of a thing that knows its name. This is you. Not the miniature version the world demanded, but the mythic version you were born to be. The scars? They're not flaws, they're rings, proof of seasons survived. Each twist in your grain tells a story of resilience, of nights you bent but didn't snap, of days you photosynthesized rage into art. Here's the paradigm shift. Schools didn't kill creativity. They just made us forget where we buried the bodies. Every time you doodled in a textbook, every time you argued with a rubric, every time you chose passion over permission, you were digging, unearthing, remembering. Neuroscientist David Eagleman explains that creativity is the brain's plan B, the ability to repurpose neural pathways when roads collapse. You've been surviving on plan B your whole life. Now, it's time to thrive there. The great realization: the world needs your specific unruly genius, not in spite of the chaos we face, because of it. Climate collapse, AI ethics, the crisis of meaning. These are not puzzles to solve, but portals to walk through, and creativity is the only key. When Einstein imagined riding a light beam, he didn't just revolutionize physics. He proved that play is the highest form of rigor. When Maya Angelou turned trauma into "I Know Why," the caged bird sings, she showed that scars can sing. You are not here to fill a job. You're here to ignite a dialectic, to force civilization's next leap. But how? By embracing the anti-fragile self, the you that grows stronger under chaos. Nassim Nicholas Taleb coined anti-fragility to describe systems that thrive on disorder. Your creativity is anti-fragile. The world tried to break it. Instead, it learned to feed on the pressure. Think of the Japanese art of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. The cracks become the art. Your failures, the bad grades, the rejected proposals, the ideas that crashed, are veins of gold. The final invitation: close your eyes. Feel the weight of the crayon in your hand, the one they took away. The paper is infinite now. No margins, no red pens, just the hum of your pulse syncing with the universe's oldest rhythm. Create, destroy, repeat. This is not a metaphor. Every morning you choose bonsai or redwood, to stay potted or tear through concrete, to whisper or quake. The hourglass flips. For 200 years, education asked, how do we control the wild? The new question, your question, is, what becomes possible when we unleash it? The answers are already emerging. In Norway, Udeskole programs teach kids in forests, using nature as curriculum. In Senegal, Tech hubs rise from landfills, innovators coding on salvaged laptops. In your neighbor's garage, a teenager 3D prints prosthetics for stray dogs. Revolution isn't a single fire, it's 10,000 sparks. Your final permission slip. You are allowed to outgrow every version of yourself. You are allowed to disappoint everyone but your soul. You are allowed to be too much, too weird, too bold. The world will try to prune you. Let it. Pruning is just evolution's way of saying, grow here next. End with the child. She's back at the desk, but the ruler is gone. The paper? A universe. Her crayon moves, not with the desperation of someone trying to escape, but the joy of someone who's realized the walls were never real. Outside the window, the teacher watches. But now, she's crying, not from anger, from awe. She picks up a crayon, starts to draw. The last line. You were never the bonsai. You were the storm that shapes the mountain. Let this video not be an end. It's a beginning. Share it, debate it. Let it live in the wild. The conversation starts now. What will you create first?